Well, good day. So, for today's video, we're gonna talk about the first cartoon appearance of that Image Comics superhero team, the WildC.A.T.S. So, alright, let's go.
Yeah. So, we start off in the offices of Reno Bryce, where a group of sinister-looking people working for the Daemonites are looking to kidnap him. The good news is that Reno knows martial arts and starts to fight back. The bad news, these goons have guns and know how to use them. So, understandably, Reno takes off. And if this random kidnapping attempt wasn't confusing enough, another group of people called the WildC.A.T.S are looking for Reno Bryce as well. Like, holy crap, what did this guy do? Luckily, these WildC.A.T.S, who consist of Spartan, Grifter, Zealot, Voodoo, and Maul, have saved Reno from a whole army of humans who were possessed by Daemonites, and they bring him back to their headquarters. Wow, this is all really entertaining and stuff, but what the hell is happening? Later, at Halo Enterprises, we finally get some answers. Team Overseer and Financier, Jacob Marlowe, uses an alien humanoid living computer named Void to scan Reno Bryce, and we learn that he is indeed a descendant of the Cherubim. Oh, okay, well that clears everything up. Actually, no it doesn't. I'm more confused now than I was before. Luckily, Jacob regales us in a quick history lesson. So, over 1,000,000 years ago, when humans were living in caves and stuff, there were two spacefaring alien enemies who were battling above the Earth. There were the last of the evil, gross-looking Daemonites who want to control the entire galaxy, and they were fighting against the human-looking, super-powered Cherubim who were trying to stop the Daemonites. Both ships crashed on Earth, and both aliens have blended into the population. The Cherubim blended in pretty easily, because they already look like humans. The Daemonites, who look like something you would have shot out of your nose, during a really bad flu, can't really blend in so well, but they do have the power to possess humans. And after all of these centuries, the Daemonites are plotting domination again. So, turns out that Reno is a descendant of one of these ancient Cherubim. And thanks to Void, he is able to activate his superpowers. His arms can stretch to any length, and his hands can turn into any blade. Dangerous! So therefore, he is called Warblade. But he doesn't want to join the other Cherubim on the WildC.A.T.S, and, I really can't blame him. Like, what a day, This is the Mondayest Monday that's ever Mondayed for him, Start off with a kidnapping attempt, getting chased by other people, and oh, by the way, you're half alien. So the dude is totally freaked out, and he takes off. Unfortunately, Warblade was not only attacked by the Daemonites, but he was possessed by one too. Holy jeez, how can this day get any worse for the guy? And that really sucks, like Warblade? With danger hands? He's like Wolverine on steroids, and he's now with the bad guys. Man, we're totally screwed! Fortunately, Void was able to track Warblade to the Daemonites' lair, the Behemoth, which is currently in the Arctic. So she creates a portal to send the rest of the WildC.A.T.S in after him. And wouldn't you know it, the WildC.A.T.S fell into a trap which was set by the Daemonite leader, Hellspont. And they are being prepped to be possessed by other Daemonites. But there is some good news. Voodoo was able to get away. She has the superpower to unpossess a human of its Daemonite haunter, I guess. And so she does exactly that with Warblade, where the two of them go and save the rest of the team. What? Hellspont still has a trick or two up his sleeve. He transported Void to the Behemoth and will try to steal the secrets and knowledge of the Cherubim from her while destroying her in the process. Therefore, a battle ensues, which is a pretty decent battle, and where the Wildcats destroy Hellspawn's computer, save Void, and retreat back to their headquarters at Halo Enterprises. So the day is saved! Hooray! And even better yet, Warblade has officially decided to join his Cherubim brotherin and sisterin of the Wildcats. And with that, that is the end of this Wild Tale.
So yeah, hey? Wildcats! Not too shabby, if I do say. So, for superhero cartoons in the 90s, right? Like, I was watching a lot more of Batman, of the X-Men, of Spider-Man. You know, the heavy hitters of 90s superhero cartoons. But for this particular one, I didn't even know it existed. I knew the Wildcats existed, you know, and Image Comics and all that kind of stuff. So for me to kind of finally watch this series, like, after all of these years, you know, it feels like I found a lost treasure. I wouldn't say it's exactly up there with Batman the Animated Series or anything, you know, but still, for what it is, man, like, it was really good. Also, a pretty faithful adaptation from the comics, you know, for the most part anyway. I think for one of the main reasons I never knew about this cartoon or never watched it before was because back in the day, all of my buddies and I were pretty split on comic book fandom. We were either Team Marvel Comics with the X-Men and Spider-Man and all that, or we were Team Image Comics with all these new characters like Savage Dragon, Wildcats, and Youngblood and all that kind of stuff. For me, I was all about Marvel Comics, right? Especially the X-Men. And even though I was a really big X-Men fan, partly because of Jim Lee and his fantastic artwork, I did not follow him to Image Comics. But I have since started reading a lot of Image Comics, you know, from back in the day. So, like, I kind of missed out, but I'm kind of making up for that. Part of that is like, man, I didn't know that Image Comics had so many cartoon series out there. So if you haven't ever checked this out before, it is a little more difficult to find it, you know, on YouTube and other kind of places. You will be able to find it, but, you know, even then, it's a little difficult. So if you want to watch it, you know, you gotta do some digging. But it is worth it, my friends. And with that, we do have a whole bunch of behind-the-scenes kind of things with Jim Lee, with Image Comics, with Wildcats, and all that kind of stuff going on over here.
So yes, indeed, hey? The Wildcats, which was created by Jim Lee, but Jim Lee, man, the legend. So let's take a quick look into how Jim Lee started and to how he wound up with the Wildcats. So, well, I guess, you know, for comparison's sake, if you look at comic books in the 1960s and 70s, the main comic book artist who really stood above the rest was Jack Kirby, an absolute legend. Not only was his art like so super fantastic, but also was his, well, I guess you could say his cinematography of how he presented the story. Like so completely dynamic. Sure, there were other awesome artists at this time, but Kirby, man, he was #1. Similarly, in the 1990s, the #1 artist at the time was Jim Lee. And an artist who is absolutely my favorite comic book artist of all time. So even on this channel, like if there's any opportunity I have to showcase Jim Lee artwork, I will do it. So Jim Lee, like any other artist, you know, really struggled to kind of get that first break into comic books. But when he got it, he ascended very quickly to the top. He got his first break with Marvel Comics, when they hired him to work on one of their mid-tier titles called Alpha Flight. And, well, you know, as a Canadian, there's nothing mid-tier about Alpha Flight, Canada's premier superhero team. Jim Lee's first issue was Alpha Flight number 51 in 1987. And from there, things started to roll pretty quick. He eventually hopped over to the brand new title, Punisher War Journal, where he started off as an inker and eventually took over the artwork with issue number 5 in 1988. One of the amazing things about Jim Lee is that he works at such a fast pace. He can work on multiple projects at once. For example, while he was working on Punisher War Journal, he would also be the guest artist on a couple of issues of the Marvel Comics flagship title, The Uncanny X-Men. He would fill in for storylines here and there whenever they really needed it. He first did his work on Uncanny X-Men in issue number 248 in 1989. Eventually, he took over the full-time artwork of the series with issue number 268 in 1990. And from there, his legend was cemented. He and writer Chris Claremont really redefined comic books in the 1990s. And his legend would be further cemented when he started a brand new X-Men comic with X-Men Volume 2, Number 1 in 1991, which was and still is the best-selling comic book issue of all time. And I mean best-selling, man. Like, this thing sold over 8 million copies. Yeah, man, like, you gotta be a freaking legend if your comic sells over 8 million copies. And he even made a fantastic X-Men trading card set. At this point, many Marvel artists were not happy with Marvel Comics. They would constantly create new characters, but Marvel would keep the copyrights and the money from that character. So a number of high talented artists wanted to leave Marvel and make their own company so they can create and retain the rights to their own characters. And, well, obviously, make all the money off of it. And I'm talking like heavy hitters, man, like Todd McFarlane, Mark Silvestri, Eric Larson, and like Rob Liefeld with his insanely improportionate drawings, but were still so amazing. But with these artists, like, as amazing as these artists are, they knew that there was no way their new company would be able to have any success unless Jim Lee was involved with them. And so eventually Jim Lee joined, and on that day, Image Comics was born. Each artist had their own studio publishing under the Image Comics banner, and with that, Jim Lee created his own studio, Wildstorm Productions. And quickly he started working on his new team with the help of his good friend, Brendan Choi, as they created the Wildcats. CATS is an acronym for Covert Action Team, I guess. And this one specific Covert Action Team went rogue, or as they say, went wild. Therefore, they are Wild Covert Action Team, Wildcats. And thusly, the Wildcats first debuted in Wildcats number 1 in 1992. And all of the characters that were featured in this featured episode did debut in that comic. Of course, being Jacob Marlowe, Spartan, Grifter, Voodoo, Zealot, Warblade, and Void, and, well, I guess also the villain, Hellspont. This cartoon series is a whole series-long story arc, which is actually really awesome. Each of the Wildcats would have an episode that would feature a story about them and their background, and how they came to be on the Wildcats. And the story was the first major story from the Wildcats comic. There were a couple of differences hither and thither, though. For example, in the cartoon, Jacob Marlowe is just a regular guy that has a lot of money. Whereas in the comic, he actually is a cherubim that does have powers that he kind of doesn't understand, but he is known as Lord Emp, as well as Jacob Marlowe, I guess, you know. Maul has the ability to change his size. In the cartoon, the bigger he gets, the more angry he becomes. Whereas in the comic book, the bigger he is, the less intelligent he becomes. Why they made that change? I don't know, but there it is. The biggest change, though, would be Voodoo. In the comic book, she is actually an exotic dancer, and the scantily clad uniform that she wears is one of her dancing costumes. this really, wouldn't work with a kid's cartoon, right? Obviously. So they changed her so she's just a dancer, not exotic, and she is wearing a complete full body covering uniform. But other than that, things are all the same. Spartan is a cyborg that had his human host's, memories and everything put into this cyborg. Zealot is an ancient warrior who was very old, and she was training Grifter. Some of her story was kind of changed in the cartoon as well, but not a whole lot. And things were going pretty awesome for the Wildcats, right? Like, they had this comic book title which was doing well, they had the cartoon series, they got a line of toys from Playmates Toys, which started in '94 with their main cast and with some of their extended villains. Like, they even got their own video game in 1995. Like, things were doing pretty good. But things come to an end. Jim Lee sold Wildstorm Productions to DC Comics in 1999. And well, that's the end of Wildstorm Productions in Image Comics. Things didn't completely end for Wildstorm, as some of the characters did pop up in DC Comics hither and thither, especially with the DC initiative of the New 52. Grifter did get his own comic book, and one that really shocked me as I was subscribed to Superman was in issue number 7 and 8, Superman was fighting against Hellspont. And at first I was like, oh, that's cool, Superman's fighting Hellspont, that's pretty neat. Until, it's like, what? Like, holy crap! But, that's pretty much it. That's where I'm gonna end it. There is a lot more we could talk about Wildcats and stuff, but we shall leave it here for now. And with this, that, those, and the other things, I guess, that's that. Also, if you're interested, I created my own comic book channel, 215 Comics. And currently, I have created my own cartoon series, The Adventures of the Density. And recently started a radio series featuring my newest character, Elastomorph, with more titles to come. So if you want to check it out, I'll leave a link up top here to that channel and some links at the end of the video. Yeah! Right on, and there you go. So thanks for watching the video. I hope you liked it as much as I did making it. Also, feel free to check out the source material that I featured in this video. And if you want to leave a comment on anything you may have liked or things I might have missed in this, feel free to do so. Or anything else, just to say hi. That's cool too. And other than that, have a great day. Thanks.